The family once lived with dignity and quiet pride. Their name was respected in town. Their shop stood in the center of the marketplace where people came not only to buy goods but also to seek advice. Because the father was known for his honesty and kindness, the mother for her warm smile and generosity, and the children for their discipline. For years they had worked hard, starting from nothing and slowly building a business that kept food on their table and respect in their hearts. But success breeds envy, and envy grows into poison. Greedy rivals watched them rise with hidden bitterness. They smiled in public but plotted in private, whispering lies and planning to destroy them. The rivals controlled banks, lawyers, and even some officials, and they knew how to twist rules. One day a false debt appeared. Papers forged with the family's name claiming they owed money that never existed. At first they laughed, believing it would be cleared easily. But the laughter faded quickly. When notices arrived from the court, demanding payments far larger than they could ever afford, the father begged to show his clean records, but the doors were already closed. Bribes had been paid to block the truth. Neighbors who once greeted them warmly began to whisper that maybe the family was dishonest. Maybe their fortune had been built on lies. The rivals spread rumors like wildfire, turning respect into suspicion. And within months the family's business was seized, their shop taken by the bank and handed over to their enemies, the shelves emptied, the sign torn down, the doors locked, and people who once depended on them now walked past without a word. Then came the cruelest blow. Their house, the home filled with memories of birthdays, laughter, and shared meals, was sold at an auction. Their rivals standing proudly in the crowd, smirking as strangers bought the place, and the family stood outside watching furniture carried away, photographs broken, walls they had painted. With love now belonging to someone else, the mother cried silently. The father's shoulders bent under the weight of shame, and the children clutched their few belongings, trying not to cry. And when the sun set that evening they no longer had a roof to sleep under, only the heavy sky above them. Their name, once spoken with respect, became a joke. Neighbors whispered loudly, mocking their ruin. Some even laughed that the proud family had finally been exposed, though there was nothing to expose, except lies created by greed, and the rivals did not stop at stealing their property. They made sure the humiliation was complete. They organized a town gathering under the pretense of celebrating new investments. But the truth was it was a stage for mockery. The family was dragged there by circumstance, standing quietly at the back, hoping to remain unseen. But the rivals called them out, making cruel jokes about their debts, laughing at how quickly their fortune had turned to dust, imitating the father's once proud walk, mocking the mother's tears, and ridiculing the children for having nothing left. The crowd laughed with them, some out of fear, others out of cruelty. The sound of it filled the hall like fire, every clap of mockery echoing like thunder. The father lowered his head, unable to defend himself. The mother wept silently, clutching her children close, and the main character, the son who had watched everything crumble, stood frozen, his fists clenched, his jaw tight, his heart pounding with rage. He wanted to scream, to strike, to silence their laughter, but he knew it would only bring more shame. So he stood in silence, every insult burning deeper than the flames of a fire, his chest heavy with helplessness but also with something stronger, a seed that had been planted in the ashes of their ruin, a vow forming quietly inside him. He swore that this insult would never be forgotten, that the day would come when the rivals' mocking voices would be silenced forever. And though he stood that night with nothing but shame, in his silence a storm was born, and one day that storm would turn their proud legacy into dews. After the night of humiliation at the town gathering, the family's life sank deeper into misery. Their business was gone, their house sold, their name broken, and they were forced to move into a small broken house at the edge of the town. A place with leaking roof, cracked walls, and cold floors, every corner reminding them how far they had fallen. The father who once stood tall now sat quietly with his head bent, his hands trembling as he counted coins that were never enough. The mother who once smiled warmly now worked her fingers raw sewing clothes for neighbors just to keep food on the table. The siblings who once studied with hope now stared at empty books, their dreams shattered by shame. And the main character walked through these rooms every day carrying the weight of all their pain. He could hear neighbors whisper outside the broken windows, laughing that the proud family was nothing but beggars now. Children from nearby streets mocking them when they passed by. People who once took help from them now crossing the road to avoid even eye contact. And though every word was a knife cutting deeper into his heart, he refused to break. At night, when the house was silent except for the sound of his mother's quiet sobs and his father's coughing, he would sit at a wooden crate that served as a table, spreading out papers and notes, studying every detail of the rivals who had caused their ruin. He traced their businesses, followed their connections, wrote down every debt they hid, every bribe they paid, every worker they cheated, and with each discovery his anger turned sharper. He knew he could not fight them yet. He was too small, too poor, too powerless. But he promised himself that the tears of his family would not be wasted. Each tear would be turned into a weapon. Each humiliation would become a step toward their destruction. Still, the struggle was harsh. There were nights they went to bed hungry, nights when rain leaked through the ceiling soaking their beds, mornings when he woke to see his father staring blankly at the floor lost in despair. And it filled him with rage. Rage not just at the rivals but also at himself for not being strong enough yet. So he took every small job he could find, lifting heavy loads at warehouses, cleaning streets at dawn, repairing broken carts. His hands blistered, his back sore, his body bruised, but he never complained. Every coin he saved he hid away, refusing to spend it on comfort. Because he was building something greater than food or rest. He was building the foundation of revenge. He remembered every laugh, every insult, every mocking face at that gathering, and it burned in his mind like fire, pushing him forward even when his body wanted to collapse. Sometimes at night he would walk past the market where their shop once stood, staring at the door that now belonged to his rivals, watching them drink wine and boast loudly inside, and he would clench his fists so tight that his nails cut into his skin. But he forced himself to walk away, whispering in silence that their time would come. His struggle in the ashes was not weakness. It was his training ground, shaping him into something harder, something more dangerous. And while the world saw a broken boy from a ruined family, inside he was becoming a storm, silent but unstoppable. And though his family cried themselves to sleep believing their life was over, he knew the truth. This was only the beginning, and one day the same people who mocked their ruin would watch their own legacy turn into dust. The family's struggle continued, but while they wept in silence, the main character turned his pain into fuel. He knew waiting for mercy would never bring back their lost honor. Only power could do that. But power could not be grabbed in the open. It had to be built quietly in the shadows where no one could see. So he began his double life. In the day he worked like any other poor man, lifting boxes in warehouses, fixing carts on the roadside, sweeping floors for coins, his clothes dusty, his hands cracked, his body aching. Yet in the night when the streets went silent and the candles burned low, he studied with burning eyes, writing notes, learning numbers, tracing business patterns, teaching himself how money flowed like water and how to control that flow. He observed his rivals from afar, noting every weakness in their empire, how their pride made them careless, how their greed made them blind. He started small, investing coins into side trades, buying goods cheap and selling them at small profit. Slowly the coins turned into stacks, and with every stack he hid it away, refusing to let his family know fully because he wanted to protect them from disappointment if he failed. While his mother thought he was working late shifts, he was meeting secret contacts, old merchants ruined by the same rivals, workers cheated and desperate for justice. Together they whispered in back alleys and dim taverns, exchanging stories, exchanging proof of corruption, and every paper, every confession became another stone in the foundation he was building. He used different names, fake signatures, and silent partners so no one could trace the money back to him. To the world he remained the broken son of a ruined family. But in reality he was gathering strength like a storm hidden behind clouds. His rivals still laughed at him openly, some even mocking him in the market, saying his family would never rise, and he smiled weakly, in return pretending to accept the insult. Yet inside he was smiling for another reason. Because while they wasted their wealth on wine and pride, he was buying pieces of land, shares in small businesses, and influence among people they ignored, merchants who hated them, bankers who wanted profit but not scandal. Slowly his shadow spread across the town, unnoticed, unchallenged. And each night when he returned to the small broken house he no longer saw only despair. He saw a battlefield where he was sharpening his sword in silence, and though his family slept believing life had ended for them, he lay awake whispering to himself that one day he would turn their name into honor again, not by begging but by destroying the empire of those who mocked them. And as the months passed his confidence grew, his hidden wealth increased, and his allies multiplied, and he knew that the day was coming when his enemies would finally see the truth, that the boy they thought broken was in fact the architect of their downfall, building in shadows an empire strong enough to reduce their legacy into dust. As his secret strength grew, he knew it was time to move from the shadows into the heart of the enemy's empire. Not with noise but with silence, not with rage but with patience. So he began to infiltrate their world step by step. He used hidden names and silent partners to buy small stakes in their companies. Businesses that looked healthy from the outside but inside were bleeding slowly. And each time he bought a share, he also bought a piece of their control. The rivals never noticed because they were too proud, too busy drinking wine, throwing feasts, and mocking those below them. They laughed at him in the marketplace, still calling his family beggars, never realizing that the beggar's son was now sitting quietly at their tables disguised as an investor. He attended gatherings in simple clothes, listening to their boasts, nodding politely, pretending to admire them while secretly recording every careless word. He placed loyal allies as workers inside their offices, clerks and accountants who owed him for helping their families. And those workers fed him secrets every week, hidden debts, forged numbers, deals made with bribes, and slowly he collected them all. Like a hunter tightening a net around prey, he began controlling suppliers, quietly buying out small companies that provided materials to his rivals' factories. And once he had control, he raised prices slightly, cutting into their profits. They complained but never realized he was behind it. He even bought land near their estates using silent fronts, choking their expansion without them ever knowing who was blocking them. And when they tried to expand into new markets, they found invisible resistance, walls built by him in silence. His rivals thought it was bad luck, bad timing, but it was his hand guiding their ruin. All the while he walked past them on the street with lowered eyes, pretending still to be weak, smiling politely while inside he laughed, because he had already crawled inside their empire like fire hidden in dry wood, waiting for the right spark to burst into flames. Their legacy was rotting from within and they didn't even see it. The same rivals who once mocked his family's ruin still bragged in public, but their empire was already his battlefield, and every move he made brought them closer to collapse. He knew the day was coming when he would no longer hide, the day when he would pull away the mask and show them that the boy they kicked into the dirt was the very man who had taken control of their foundation. And in that moment he promised himself he would not just win, he would erase them completely, turning their proud legacy into dust. The day finally came when silence was no longer needed. He had infiltrated their empire so deeply that every wall they leaned on was already cracked. Every rope they held onto was already fraying. And now it was time to pull everything down in one strike. He gathered the evidence he had collected for years, files of forged documents, secret accounts, bribery records, and testimonies of workers they had cheated, and instead of hiding them he carried them to the very same hall where his family had once been mocked. This time the crowd filled the seats again, people buzzing with curiosity because rumors had already started spreading. The rivals stood proudly at the front, their heads high, their smiles wide, boasting again about their wealth and power, laughing loudly as if the world belonged to them. And then the doors opened, and he walked in, no longer the boy they had laughed at but a man dressed with calm confidence. His steps slow but heavy with power. The hall went silent, whispers rising quickly as people recognized him. The son of the ruined family, the one they had all pitied and mocked, now standing tall in front of everyone. The rivals tried to laugh again, tried to humiliate him with words, but their laughter sounded hollow, weak, and when he opened the folder and laid out the documents on the table the entire hall gasped. Page after page revealed their fraud, their theft, their betrayals. The government officials present leaned forward, their faces darkening. Reporters rushed to write every word, and the crowd erupted in anger. Neighbors who had once believed the lies now realized the truth. Their respect for the rivals vanished instantly. The rivals' smiles broke, their faces pale, sweat dripping down their foreheads as they tried to shout that it was all fake. But the proof was too strong, undeniable. And then he spoke with a voice steady and sharp, reminding the crowd of the night when his family was mocked, reminding them how his father lowered his head and his mother cried, how his siblings were laughed at, and how their legacy was stolen with lies, and now the truth stood naked in front of everyone. Their proud empire nothing but sand. The crowd turned against the rivals, shouting, jeering, throwing curses, and for the first time the powerful men trembled in fear. Their partners began to leave, investors backed out, banks closed their doors on them, and within days their businesses collapsed, their properties seized, their accounts frozen, their houses emptied, and their name which once carried weight became a curse spoken with disgust. The same people who once clapped for them now spit when they walked by. Their children avoided in schools. Their wives ashamed to show their faces, and he watched all of it with cold satisfaction. The rivals had mocked his family's ruin, but now their own legacy was reduced to dust. Their statues toppled. Their empire burned without a single flame. And the same hall that once echoed with laughter at his family's pain now shook with cheers for his victory. The ruin of their legacy was complete. And it was more painful for them than death because they were forced to live and watch everything they built disappear forever. The rivals' empire had crumbled like a castle of sand under a rising tide, their wealth seized, their homes empty, their names dragged through mud. But for him the true victory was not in their fall alone. It was in the rise of his family's honor from the ruins. He walked through the same streets where people once whispered against them, and now those whispers turned into respectful greetings. Neighbors who had laughed at their misery now lowered their eyes in shame when he passed. Some even tried to apologize, but he never wasted words on them, because their guilt was punishment enough. Instead he focused on his family. He rebuilt the shop they had lost, reopening it under a new name, bigger and stronger. The shelves once again filled with goods, the signboard shining proudly. His father who had once sat broken now smiled again, his hand steady as he stood behind the counter. His mother's tears turned from sorrow to joy as she welcomed customers who now returned. With respect, his siblings who once felt crushed by shame now walked through the town with heads held high, their laughter ringing out again like music after years of silence, and he stood quietly watching them, knowing every smile was carved from the pain they had endured. But the story did not end there. He bought back the house that had been taken from them, standing once again at its gates, the walls repainted, the windows glowing with light. And he remembered the night they were forced to leave, the mocking voices, the cruel laughter, and he whispered to himself that nothing lasts forever, not humiliation, not defeat, because with patience and strength even ruins can turn into power. The town that once celebrated his rivals now celebrated him. Banners of respect hung in the marketplace. Officials who once turned their faces now came to shake his hand, and he accepted it all with calm silence, never forgetting the vow he had made the night of humiliation. His rivals, meanwhile, lived in the shadows, broken and forgotten, their children taunted, their faces lined with despair. They had to watch every day as the family they mocked now stood taller than ever. And that was the deepest wound of all. He did not need to hurt them further because life itself had made them powerless, their legacy reduced to dust, and his family's name carved again in stone. One evening as the sun painted the sky red he stood outside the shop, watching his father smile with customers, hearing his mother's gentle laughter, seeing his siblings busy with work, and he felt a quiet fire inside, not of rage anymore but of triumph. He had turned pain into power, insult into justice, ruin into glory, and as he looked toward the empty houses of his rivals he whispered softly that they thought they had ended him when they mocked his family. But in truth they had only awakened him. They gave birth to the storm that destroyed them. And now their legacy was nothing but dust carried away by the wind, while his stood unshaken, strong, and eternal.